this edition of Daily Trail Markers, Senator Kamala Harris's campaign is changing its strategy and betting big on Iowa. Campaign officials told reporters Thursday they want a top 3 finish in the state, and they are adding more staff and opening additional offices there. The campaign also said Harris plans to spend half of October campaigning in Iowa. She only spent 11 days in the Hawkeye State over the course of June, July, and August. This all comes as a recent CBS News Battleground Tracker poll shows Harris trailing in Iowa, with poll numbers down 10 points since July. Harris addressed her campaign's expectations for Iowa Thursday after a meet and greet with voters. Here's what she told CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe.
Listen, I know what Iowa is capable of, and we are invested in Iowa on every level, from the staff we've got on the ground, the offices that we have opened and continue to open here, and the time that I'm committed to spending here to earn the support of the folks in the state.
Let's bring in Caitlin Huey-Burns and Adam Brewster. Caitlin is a CBSN political reporter. She's with me here in New York. And Adam is a CBS News 2020 campaign reporter. He is in Coralville, Iowa. Thanks to both of you for being with us. But Caitlin, let me start with you. Why is Harris deciding to go all in on Iowa right now?
Well, this comes after her campaign has seen kind of a series of stumbles. Remember that first debate a couple of months ago when she went pretty hard after Joe Biden? She saw a rise in the polls, a bump for her campaign, but that continued to end up slipping over the course of this next couple of months. And a lot of the things that she was trying to do just weren't working. So this seems to be a calibration that the campaign is making heading into the fourth quarter. They also told us that they are going to focus on retail politics more so than fundraising. Their fundraising schedule has been very heavy over the past few months. And so that's something to consider as well. They also argue that, of course, Iowa is the first state to weigh in. So that they have to make this a priority, certainly. So they say that she's going to spend half the month of October in Iowa. She's going to be headed there every week next month. It is a huge bet, certainly, and a early setting of goalposts. So does certainly come with some risks.
So, Adam, you are there in Iowa, and the campaign, as Caitlin just told us, had put a heavy focus on fundraising early on. But what are you hearing from the campaign about how it plans to move forward from here?
So, Caitlin hit it on. They had spent a lot of time on fundraising, and they said that's what set them up to be able to spend time here and put resources in Iowa. They wouldn't say how well they did this quarter, although they acknowledge the third quarter is historically a lower quarter for fundraising totals. But they said they feel good about it, and that's what's put them in the position that they're in now to be able to invest in Iowa. Senator Harris tonight was asked after her event in Coralville about, why choosing Iowa over other states, and she acknowledged that you have to make decisions about where you can spend. Of course, she can only be in one place at one time, and she said she'll be still spending time in places like South Carolina. And she said, until there's campaign finance reform, I will have to do fundraising. But she did acknowledge it's frustrating to feel like there's these decisions that they've had to make decisions that feel like trade-offs, was the term that she used. But she said they're going to be spending a lot of time here and that they're committed to this.
So, Caitlin, the Iowa caucus is 4 months away, but Harris's campaign says they are putting the goal of finishing in the top 3 in Iowa. It's a pretty, they have a pretty good amount of time. Is that a realistic goal?
Well, it's very early to be setting that kind of goal, and it seems to be an acknowledgement that she has to do well in Iowa or the campaign might not be able to continue. So this kind of Iowa or bust mentality is what the campaign was trying to stress to us today. As Adam said, she still is going to be campaigning and investing in South Carolina. That's a state that is much more diverse, where African-American voters are the key constituency. And that's a state, too, that is the gateway, as we know, to Super Tuesday and those even more diverse states like Texas and California. But this is a recognition that they have to do well in Iowa. And it's something that we have heard the Biden campaign talk about in a different way. When we talked to the Biden campaign last month, they said that Iowa is not a must-win for them. So that was a downplaying of expectations in the state. The campaign also told us that, look, they didn't expect this to be a crowded field for this long. And so that's been having an impact as well.
Interesting, Adam. Caitlin just mentioned Biden's strategy with with Iowa. So, have other candidates tried the type of strategy that Harris is trying with Iowa before? And is it one that can work?
So the time spent in Iowa is not necessarily correlated with success. There are basically candidates who have spent a lot of time here. You look at Barack Obama in 2007, 2008, spent a lot of time here and, of course, won the Iowa caucuses. That year also, John Edwards spent a lot of time here and went to all over rural Iowa and surpassed Hillary Clinton to finish second here. In 2012, Rick Santorum in the Republican primary was not polling well as late as November, kind of just set up base camp here in Iowa, ended up eventually winning the Republican Iowa caucuses. And of course, you go back way back into the 1970s, Jimmy Carter in 1976, nobody really knew who he was. He came to Iowa all the time, did all of that retail politicking, and ended up winning, or was the candidate who had the most delegate preference coming out of the Iowa caucuses that year, and that's who a lot of people point to. Now, on the flip side, there are candidates who have spent a lot of time here and who haven't done well, and sometimes that might be an issue of messaging. Chris Dodd in 2008, to go back to that year, moved to Iowa and didn't do very well in the caucuses, finished near the bottom. And you can even look at this cycle. John Delaney has been campaigning for 2 years. Most of that time has been in Iowa, and he often polls in the low single digits, if not at 0%. So the time you spend here isn't necessarily so much as important as time spent and the message. So it'll be interesting to see how those two things come together with Senator Harris.
It worked for Jimmy Carter, but he was a farmer, so maybe that had something to do with it. But we'll see. So, Caitlin, we mentioned that CBS News Battleground Tracker poll that shows Harris trailing among likely Democratic voters. Who are her biggest threats right now?
What was interesting, what that poll found was that people who supported her in July, when you fast forward to September when the poll was released, that a lot of her supporters had switched to Warren. Some of them had switched to Biden. And so that is something that should be a cause of concern for the campaign, because she has been losing support to top rivals. We did hear from the campaign today that they want to keep the message focused on Donald Trump. I asked them if last week in the debate, she turned to the camera and sent that message directly to Donald Trump instead of attacking Joe Biden as she did in the previous two debates, if that was something that we would see more of. They said that she will draw contrasts with her fellow rivals, but wants to keep the party united around focusing on defeating Donald Trump.
All right. Caitlin Huey-Burns and Adam Brewster, thanks to both of you.